It is 7 o'clock, and we welcome you all here at the Connected Geek. Thank you for coming, and thank you for registering for our program. I hope you guys learned a lot today. This is a Michigan State of Success production, and my name is Jodi Luster, and we are going to be doing Introduction to Grant Writing. So let me tell you a little bit about me, and then I'll talk a little bit about more what the introduction is going to entail. So, my name is Jodi Luster, and I have a very strong background in nonprofits. I have a master's degree in social work, and have been working that degree for over 15 years now. I worked for a nonprofit for, technically, I'm still with them. So that would be over 16 years now. And one of the jobs that I had as I kind of moved around at that company was director of operations. And during that time, part of my job was doing the things that I do now in my own company, which is administrative services. So I made sure we managed our risks. I made sure our budgets were good. Unfortunately, I had to slash programs and lay people out. That's not the fun part of being a manager. That part sucks, but I did have a chance to write many grants and help implement many programs. I learned how to do grant writing kind of backwards. I used to do the program implementation part as I was moving up in the company, and then I would contribute and have to read what the contract was after the grant was written. And then I began to contribute to grants, and then I began to actually start writing the grants. So it's a kind of a great way to learn, because I started on the operational side of a grant, because most of the time when we do grant and proposals, it's about a program or behavior that we're going to put forth in the universe, and they're going to pay us for it. So I did the behavior, and then I learned what you have to write in order to get the money to put forth that behavior intervention program. So it was a really interesting learning curve. That's a huge company. I worked for one component, the child and family component, and 80%, 85% of their funding comes from state and other grant sources. So it was vital that we made sure that we won a great majority of our grants, or else we would not be in existence. So I still do that for them, and I would like to transfer some of that knowledge to you all today. But we're going to do a little bit of just introduction to grant writing. So this is going to be just a kind of a light flavor about what goes into writing a proposal or grant. And we're going to talk about some of those functions. But it's not going to be the detailed pieces, because that would take time. It took me about a good 4 or 5 years to really start mastering grant writing. But there's places where you can start, and the more you do it, the better you learn and the better you get at it. So hopefully this will be a great jump off for you. Now, a little icebreaker for the two of you in studio, and I know we have some folks at home. So our master of ceremonies, Mr. Marshall, if he has any hands up on the website, we can always try to see if we can field some questions either on social media or what have you. But I would like for you all to talk to me a little bit about your experience with either grant writing, proposal writing, or your aspirations for proposal writing. So we have a good idea of what you want to learn and what we can either serve you, how we can serve you better in this training or in another training. We're going to go again. Okay. Gail. Okay.
I'm going to be interested in how to find grants. The field I hope to be going into is medical.
Okay.
And I have previously taken fundraising for the arts, so it's totally different. And so I need assistance on how to start looking for grant funding.
Okay, excellent. Mercedes?
The same thing.
Okay.
And also, I want to see how to write grants for a nonprofit and get grants for just strictly businesses. Okay. I want to be able to help people to bring their dreams to life with the help of government dollars.
Okay, all right. And not all grants are government dollars, but we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay. So objectives, we always want to make sure that you're taking some concrete information away from the training. So we want you to be able to possess a greater understanding of grants and their various forms. And there are different ways that we can identify what is a grant or what is another form of fund offering. I want you to learn the fundamental composition of basic grants and proposals. So there's a general body to a grant. And of course, we want you to know where to begin a search for grants and funding. And that's a very small piece, but it's a large field of where you can find places to get money. Okay? So, what's the point of it all? So why grants or proposals? So why would we even consider this venue of writing a grant or proposal? Well, for one, money, right? This is a great way to get funding for something. And whether it's for-profit or nonprofit or projects, there is money out there if you kind of know where to look or begin doing your research. And then we have to expand the brand, because when you get funded, especially by a large funder, your name is now out there. A lot of times, large funders have to disclose the names of those who won large grants or large contracts. And so that gives you an opportunity to really push your brand forward to the public eye, right? And we know exposure is vital to any business and its growth. And then, of course, you want to secure contracts for longevity and proof of value. We're going to talk a little bit more about this, but being able to secure a grant also gives you the ability to secure more grants and contracts. And when you're able to do that, you can begin to really operationalize your sustainability plan, okay? So I label this part, Are You My Type? Because these are the basic types of grants that are out there. We have private grants. We've got government grants. And of course, we have solicited grants. And we'll talk a bit about that too. This is probably the private grants, depending on where you go, and the solicited grants are going to give you a higher percentage of success. Government grants, as many as they are, as high as the statistic is that you'll get them. So just keep that in mind, because we also have to play the odds when we do everything. Everything is a little bit of a numbers game. The chances of you winning so many millions of dollars in the lottery is going to be a certain percentage. And some people don't like those odds. And so when you look at government grants, depending on the form of government and what you're writing for, it can be kind of like a lottery. So these two are going to be, especially for starters, are going to be a higher percentage of your ability to get them. So, private. When we think of private grants, they usually cater to certain populations, and they're garnered from certain places. For example, most of the time nonprofits tap into private grants. And usually a lot of private grant funders only want you to be a not-for-profit. Some foundations, they exist to give private monies, family money, corporation money. They exist to give out this money, and it provides a tax write-off for the organization or the family or what have you. But it also does a community service. And that goes to our community outreach and investment. For extremely large companies, for Fortune 500 companies, I can probably say with 99% accuracy that all of them have some sort of funding ability and funding responsibility to the community, either in their city, in the state, nationally, and often internationally. You just have to know where to look. Somebody's giving you some money. If you know that name, if that's a household name, they're giving money. You just got to figure out what it is they're giving money for and how you access that for them. Okay? And then there's political. And we know about people who contribute to political campaigns and to We have all of these new super contributing forces for politics. Like those are forms of money that people can tap into based on, of course, what your interest is and their special interest. And so there are people who fund for special interest. And they wouldn't be considered necessarily always grants, but when you're talking about money, you're looking for sometimes angel investors or crowdfunding, and they usually want a stake. But then there are people who are just really benevolent and donors, and if they like what you're doing, they can contribute to it. So government grants, and we were talking a little bit about that. And of course, every form of government that you can think of, there is some form of proposal or bidding that they do. So you have an opportunity to write and request funds for specific programming that they're asking for. One of the things about government granting is that they tell you exactly what they want. And that's what they want to see when you write a proposal or grant. Municipal, almost every city or township has certain grants that they write. They contract certain services out. State, federal. Most people know about federal, and a lot of people know about state. I'm not sure how widespread, but every state generally writes proposals to get federal dollars, and then they disseminate them through the state. Okay, and then there's of course direct federal nonprofit or other entity. You can do direct federal granting. Education and research. There's lots of education and research grants for people who are doing studies, lab, educational research on various topics of interest that are given out by a lot of health or healthcare foundations, schools, universities, hospitals, that sort of thing. And then all types of contracts and grants for small, cultural innovation. So there's grants for coming up with new ideas. There's money out there that's sort of free, but lots of strings attached. You can think of, okay? And then there's solicited grants. And what I mean by solicited is kind of like cold calling. If you know anything about marketing, there's cold calling. Except with this, you really want to probably start with your warm market if you really want to be successful. But you can, and it's like any relationship. You start with an introduction and you begin to kind of court either an entity, a company, an agency to get them to really look at what you're offering. This takes time, but it can be probably one of the most lucrative ways to secure ongoing funding. You can promote your brand. You can expose your program in different venues. Some solicited proposals or grants are research-based. And by need-based is if you know the company or you know the entities that you're approaching, you might also know what their needs are. And if your specialties lie in where they need, it makes it a lot easier to court or become a partner or become basically favorite child or an adopted program by a specific company. This is very successful. Yes, ma'am.
Would you classify need-based as something that, let's say a city needed a sculpture,
Mm-hmm.
and you would be able to provide that?
Mm-hmm. And you would write a proposal. They might not have done a bid for it. And it might be a smaller city, and they may not fall under the auspices of some of the communications regulations and things for municipalities. And they may secure you to do that sculpture. There's always ways and discretionary funds, we'll put it that way, that special entities and other just high dollar earning companies have to do things like that, which is why this can be very successful. If you are a good marketer, if you are good at talking to people, if people like your presence, if people are genuinely attracted to you and what you're doing, this is probably the most successful way of getting money from people. Because people like to do business with people they like. And if you're a a person that people like or gravitate to, you can tap into people's discretionary dollars because they enjoy you or they enjoy your art or they enjoy your brand and contracts for various things that you're good at without having to go through the whole bid process. And that's what a lot of people probably don't do, because networking at this level can be very intimidating because you usually have to talk to all the people in charge to get this done. So, but this, I've seen this work very well for people. So I do encourage people to look more into that type of contracting to get monies. A rose by any other name. I want people to know what they're looking at when they see grants, bids, proposals, because those are the names that you're going to see. Most of us think of, oh, it's a proposal. We're doing proposal writing, grants, and those are the ones. Michigan uses bids a lot. And there's a lot of other entities, especially governmental entities, that say, you know, we're putting in a bid. Request for quote. And sometimes they're very specific. Sometimes a request for quote means a whole proposal. And sometimes it means we just want to know how much you would charge us to do the service. And they really just want a quote. $582 per unit or per hour or per service. And you put it in, and they take like the 3 lowest quotes and offer them a bid to put in a full proposal, you know. So you've got to do your homework for these, but they are very specific at times. And then there's the request for proposal, and that's generally exactly what it means. They want you to submit an entire written proposal with all the hoots and whistles and all of the components that they specifically ask for. And then the request for bids. And then there's some other ones, an invitation to bid, which are ITBs. The state is good for that one. And then contractor, subcontractor services. A lot of times people ignore this because it always sounds technical, but they contract with people to do services for various things. And you put in a proposal to win a contractor service. A lot of times we think about trash collecting, street sweeping, doing the lights or the infrastructure when we're talking about contractor services. But nonprofits contract and subcontract with people to do components of programming. They subcontract space. They subcontract IT. You know, so you got to look carefully at all of these titles so you can see if you fit into one of these categories. And then there are funding opportunities. And so a lot of people will list proposals or opportunities to get monies through what they call funding opportunities.
Can you give an example of funding opportunity?
Sure. The OJJDP, which is the Office of Juvenile Justice and Department of Delinquency Programming, that's federal government, they send out funding opportunities, and they will list all kinds of grants and proposals that will be funded by their department. So sometimes it's about drug prevention. Sometimes it's about after school programming. You know, so they list theirs as funding opportunities, and you got to go through and read and see if any of those funding opportunities fall under your area or program of expertise. And I think it's some other entities that listed as funding opportunities. You might find that on some international websites for people who do funding from overseas, companies who do international business. So it just depends on what they like their lingo to be. But you will see funding opportunities quite a bit from large organizations. And then they have bids underneath. So it's usually a link to a link. So it might not be the direct proposal, but it might be another department that's offering proposals. So the basic components of a proposal: grant, bid, funding opportunity. We are going to do the body. We got MJ here representing. There's usually, well, not usually, sometimes, especially for governmental grants or proposals, there's a mandatory pre-bid registration or meeting. And some of these are mandatory because they want to know if you're really serious, if you're really interested, and it gives them a chance to kind of do a weed out process, right? So if I said, you have to come to this place at 4 p.m. on Friday, you know, in April. And if you don't make it, and you don't sign up, or somebody from your agency signs up, you don't get a chance to put in a proposal. And that happens quite a bit, especially with government, because it gives them some way of saying, okay, we only got 4 people here, so we know we'll get 4 or less proposals for us to read, go through, and scrutinize. Because it takes time to go through the proposals, especially the size of which most municipalities ask, most governmental entities ask for a lot of information. And somebody has to review all of that. And so if they can whittle that down, that's less time consuming for them. So they do this a lot. Usually you don't get this with government grants, like federal government grants. You get this with state grants, city grants, some of coordinating agencies, and coordinating agencies are doorways for money. Parks and Rec may do this because they're smaller departments. And so depending on how they do their grant screening, they don't want to spend a whole lot of time screening hundreds of thousands of submissions. So to do a pre-bid meeting is a way to say, okay, we're only going to have to read 3, you know, we're only going to have to read 20 of these things. And usually there's a organizational information or cover letter. Private grants sometimes, and when you're soliciting, you do a private cover. But when you're doing federal grants, they usually want organizational information, and they tell you exactly what they want. And they tell you how they want it. They want it APA style, and they want your title here, or they'll give you a form, and you have to fill it out. And that's usually the cover of your grant. And you have to put certain numbers on there, certain contact individuals. You have to sign it based on who is the authorized signer, all of that. So if, especially any kind of governmental grant, they're going to tell you what you need. Private and solicited, you're going to have to come up with your own cover letter. Now, I didn't do a breakdown in here, but cover letters, usually you have an executive summary kind of saying, this is what my company is about, organization is about, or this is what the proposal is about. And then you start going into your body. And you still have to put your organizational information, but your cover letter is kind of like when you do a resume. It's your, like a cover letter. You're selling the product that you're about to present, or you're selling the program or the service that you're about to present to them. And then there's the body. Now, of course, this is the hardest part. Smallest word up here, but it's the hardest part, and it's the most time consuming. And this is going to be where all of your time, meat and potatoes, information and energy goes into creating. And of course, we have the budget. This is another piece. A lot of times, people fall short on the budget. The good thing about a lot of state and federal, they give you kind of a budget worksheet, especially states, because they have to be so specific with their budget, simply because they're answering to the feds a lot of times for that money. So they're very specific about the budget, and they usually give you a template, and it'll tell you if you mess up something or if you left something out. When you go directly for federal grants, a lot of times you have to come up with your own budget template, and it's got to be understandable to whoever's going to be scrutinizing it. The city and county and municipalities are usually the same way. There's a lot more carte blanche in how you formulate your body and budget. But the states are generally very specific because they have to be run by very tight budgets. And a lot of times they do it for nonprofits. And so they want to see certain things for nonprofits. So they want to see how you break down your budget in very specific ways. It's good to do a state budget because then you know what goes in almost every other budget. If you can master one of those budgets, which tend to be like 20 pages long, you can do anybody's budget anywhere. So I suggest you find a state grant and just do the budget for kicks and giggles because it's a great tutorial. And then the last part of a proposal is your attachments, which is your evidence, and then sometimes also certifications, depending on what you're going for. So these are general grant writing components, proposal, right? No matter what area. It could be science, it could be art, it could be nonprofit, it could be for-profit. You should have all these components, no matter what it is that you are applying for, okay?
Good question.
Let's see, we've got an online question. It says, what are ways to avoid getting your proposal denied? Okay. To make sure to skip something they've told you to do. They will tell you if they're good. This is a huge caveat. There are entities who put out proposals who are very, very bad at telling you what they want. And depending on who wrote it in what department, you will see some requests for a proposal or for a bid or a quote that are very detailed, and you will see some that are very haphazard. And it will just depend on the site, who you're going for, what department of the city, state, government it is. Some departments are very explicit. They say, we want A, A1, A2, A3, A3, 2, A3, and then you know it. As long as you answer all the questions, you've got it. Then there are some that say, well, just send us what you want there, and you just send in something, and they're like, well, this isn't what we wanted. But they were not very explicit in asking you or telling you what format to follow. So it's good to be able to apply for proposals or grants that are very explicit, because all you have to do is then really do the job presenting your program. Those ones that aren't explicit, you better have your components down. And especially if they're explicit, because they're going to figure if you can't follow the directions that are written on the paper, why would we give you money? I mean, if I ask you for something and there's a dollar sign attached, I'm probably not going to get it because you weren't able to follow the directions as stated in the proposal. So that is a number one way to get your proposal thrown out. If you are not answering every single direction that they give you. And again, some proposals are super directive. They're so directive, they're almost restrictive, which is okay if you really need that money or if you really love that program or service that they are asking for. But if it's less prescriptive, you have to know your stuff so that you're all inclusive, because it can get thrown out and nobody would tell you that it got thrown out. They'll say, well, your budget wasn't detailed enough. Even though they just said budget and they didn't say they wanted to know what percentage of administration you were taking, how much of that admin was paying for, was there any capital capacity building in that? Was there, they aren't explicit. They'll say, give me a budget. And they figure you know how to write proposals and you know what you're putting in this budget. And if it's not detailed enough, they can throw your proposal out. Sometimes they do that. They'll read the budget first and throw the whole thing out because they don't like what they see. And some will tell you that can happen and some will not. Sometimes if you leave things off of the kind of the organizational information or the cover letter, if you leave off your tax ID number, if you leave off an email address, if you don't cite the bid or the proposal appropriately, they'll throw the whole thing out. And they do that because if I have 100 of these to read, I need a way to whittle it down. That's time consuming. And no matter who you are, whether you're a government, organization, individual, time is money. So if I have an excuse to throw your proposal away, I'm going to throw it away. So that is why it's important to make sure you have all of these components as complete as possible. Sometimes less is more, but when it comes to some of those pieces that are like mandatory, you give them exactly what they need and maybe a little bit more just to cover yourself. So hopefully that answers Andrew's question. Let me make sure she didn't. Another one. Okay, so hopefully, Andrea, that answers your question, okay? Okay, so we talked about the mandatory pre-bid registration meetings, and you got to read those bids very carefully when you're on certain sites. Read all the ancillary information, read all of the attachments, because sometimes it'll be a funding opportunity, and it'll say a link, and it'll be a link to the proposal, and then they'll have multiple attachments. Read all the attachments so that you don't miss any mandatory registrations or meetings, or you have to send your email address to so-and-so by 4 p.m. on Wednesday, or you won't be able to submit a proposal. So you gotta make sure you read all the information, all the ancillary things, so you can have the opportunity to really be in competition for this money. And then the organizational information and cover letter, I think we kind of covered that. But usually it wants your company or your entity, agency, the contact information, which today is usually website, email, phone, fax, and anything else, address. Authorized signers, because a lot of times, especially large dollar funding, is going to turn into a contract. And so they want to know, so if I give you this, who am I supposed to call so I can sign this contract? Because now it's a legal binding entity and I need to know who the signer is going to be and who I'm going to make these checks and payments to, basically. Who's going to sign for this? Tax ID, that's very important, especially if you're not-for-profit, because they need to know that you are truly an established not-for-profit and that you have a tax-exempt ID number. And then other registrations or identifiers. DUNS numbers, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that, but when you're applying for any kind of governmental funds, you usually have to have a DUNS number. Sometimes you have to be registered to do business in certain counties and certain states, and you register with the county treasurer's office or whatever office is handing out those certificates. If you have a specific skill, some kind of trade, you've got to send in your certificates and licensing. If you are a child welfare, you have to send in your child welfare, all that. So sometimes they ask for some of those identifiers. More of that is going to be on the attachments, but some registrations, NDPI number, if you're doing any kind of healthcare or mental health, that might be on your information or cover letter. And then the body. So this part's important because it answers all the questions and tells the story, right? This is the most important part of the proposal. As long as you've answered all of the questions right, you put all the information on your cover letter or your organizational information sheet, you've attended any pre-bid meetings that you needed to go to, now it's down to the who, what, when, where, why, and how you're going to implement this program, service, statute, build this machine, whatever it is that you are getting contracted to do if you win this proposal, all right? So it also gives the vital information on why you're the right person for the company. So this is where you get to get some creativity. My number one grants I've written are state grants, which can be 160 pages. So there's a lot of specificity in what they want from the state. So you have to get creative in between the answering the questions is when you have to put in the little extra we're going to give you. This is what you asked for, and this is what we're going to give you, which everybody who has decent reading comprehension is going to say they're going to give. So what makes you the person I should choose? Why should I give you this money over the other 50 people who have the same basic background in doing this? So that's where you have to get creative. That's where you put in your extra experience or what, okay, we're gonna provide these sculptures for you. But what we're also gonna do is, because I have a awesome landscaper on the staff, we're gonna put these little garden around it, you know what I'm saying? So you gotta give them some bang for their buck. And they'll be like, oh, maybe we should pick this one because we're getting ABC what we asked, but we're also getting D, E, and F. And we didn't bargain for that. This is the person who offered that. Nobody else gives that extra. So you got to find ways to give them, to over-deliver. And that's where you do that in the body. You over-deliver. But then you actually have to over-deliver. You can't just say it. You have to actually do it during program implementation or you will never get this money again. And then when you do all this and you answer all the questions, it lets them know you did your homework. So depending on who you're asking money from, you should know your audience. Know if it's the state, do your homework. What's the agenda politically on the table surrounding whatever service offering you're bidding on or presenting a proposal for? If it's a company like Target or Walmart or GE You have to know what are their initiatives, what are their pillars, what's their mission, what's their vision, especially surrounding this particular pot of money. So do your homework and then give them what they want plus a little extra to make yourself stand out in the grant, right? And again, it lets them know what they're getting for their money. It's the verbiage to the budget. And this is the other big piece. This is a training by itself, and we may be presenting that as doing the budget, because I know that's where a lot of people struggle. That's where people who have degrees in accounting struggle, because I see it, and I've had to work with the accounting department to get the budget right. I'm like, why is this so hard? Well, my mom was an accountant, so maybe it makes it a little easier for me. But numbers are intimidating to people, even people who work with numbers. So this can kill you, or this can make you the winner. So what is the cost? What is the cost of this program? The trend over the last 15 years has been, well, probably I'd say 10, because we are supposedly out of a recession, is lowest bidder. That has been the trend because money has been tight worldwide. For some reason, there's plenty of money out there. There's plenty of billionaires, but they were holding on to it or something. So money has been tight, and entities were doing a lot of this lower bidder thing. So you still want to be competitive, but now that we're supposedly coming up out of the water from this recession worldwide, we're looking at quality, and you want to make sure that you're giving people some meat and potatoes, but not necessarily, bottoming out yourself, because you get what you pay for also. So that's another issue that you have to watch with the economy. What is their trend for this agency? Do they do the lowest bidder, or are they looking for some real quality services and are willing to pay a little bit for it? So know that when you're doing your budget. What are you quoting and why? What prices are you quoting? For personnel, for materials, for supplies, for equipment, for overhead, which is like lights, gas, internet, phone. What are you quoting, and why is this necessary to implement this service or program or deliver this deliverable, which is like a statue or a machine? Why is that necessary? And who's going to pay for it and how? Because some proposals don't pay for the whole thing. Sometimes you get a little bit of money to fund a piece of a project. So that's when they want to know, okay, we'll give you $5,000, but this is a $100,000 program. Where is the rest coming from? And they want to know, because they're like, why would I trust you with my $5,000 if you don't know where the other 95,000 is coming from? Because I'm probably not going to get what I paid for, because you're not going to be able to implement the program, the agency, the material, because you can't fund it. So they want to know who's paying for it and how, and are you matching? Are you bringing any money to the table? Do you have any skin in the game? This is your organization, but have you invested in this particular program, service, or deliverable that you're asking me money for? And sometimes they want to see 10% matching. And sometimes it titrates down. Maybe in the beginning, they want to see 5% for the first year. Next year, they might want to see 10. Year after that, they might want to see 50. And they want to see, what's your sustainability plan? Because we're pulling out. So how are you going to keep this program service going, or how are you going to keep giving these deliverables if this first year we give you 50,000, but next year we only give you 35, and the year after that we're only going to give you 25. So they want to see what's your sustainability plan. If you're matching, how are you matching? That should be an and where is the money going to be spent? So that's why your budget can make you or break you. How are you spending this money? If it's my money and I'm giving you a lot of money, I want to know how you're spending this money. And you think about it, if you're giving anybody money, somebody asks you for a loan, or they say, okay, I'm going to take this money, I'm going to do this with it, and I'm not going to pay you back. Which is what grants are, right? You're not paying them back. Most of the time, you're not paying them back. This isn't a loan. This is free money. I'm giving you money. You don't have to pay it back, but there are hoops that you have to jump through. There are strings attached. So I need to know that you're going to jump through those hoops, and you are going to keep those strings attached. And so they want to know, where is this money going? And a lot of people fail on the budget. So hopefully, Andrea, you understand that it's another place you can fail on the budget, because we're not explicit enough, because sometimes we don't know. We don't know where the money's going. We just want the money because we know we need the money and we want to get things going. But you need to know what you're doing with that money before you get it, because you won't get it. Okay, attachments, evidence, and certifications. And we talked about this. So sometimes forms, if it's a program or if it's some kind of educational opportunity, you're teaching the community something, or you're delivering something to a group of professionals or a leadership conference or whatever the proposal is. Sometimes sending a few forms, don't send them everything, because they can just duplicate your stuff and not give you any money. But give them a little taste of, I'm ready to do this right now. I can do this. Letters of recommendation. A lot of times in your attachments, you get endorsements from either other clients, from people, of course, who commented on your services, from other organizations who are well known in the community, whose reputation is stellar, who can say, yes, I know Gail, I think she's awesome, and you guys need to give her this money. So those kinds of things help strengthen your proposal. Licenses or certifications of services. Again, talking about, are you licensed to do what it is that you say you're an expert in? And do you have any certifications to qualify what you say you can do? Or are you qualified to do business in Monroe County, or business in Wayne County, or wherever? Because a lot of times that is what they're asking for. Accreditations, nonprofits get accredited, health entities get accredited. Some people don't know this language, but there's like JCO, and there's COA, and there's CARF, and those are accreditations that basically somebody comes in and determines that your organization is a quality organization because you follow these standards and pillars and you maintain these standards. And so you send in your certificates of accreditation, and you pay for that as an organization to become accredited, and it's not cheap. I have a new question. Okay, so there's some new questions on the thing. I'm going to go through it after I finish this. IT capabilities. They want to know, are you tech savvy? Do you have the ability to do things and keep up with today's technology? So if you have any kind of technology standards in practice in place, that's a good way. Sometimes it's good to test it. Sometimes you don't have to. You can explain that in the body. And then insurances, a lot of different services and programs, or if you've got a deliverable, they want to know, are you insured? So if something happens, we're not paying twice for this thing, or lawsuits are covered, or any of those mishaps. Now they asked for, our online community asked for grants and funding for housing, especially in urban areas, and then urban farming. Usually you have to go to either the Department of Agriculture, or you go to HUD for housing. And then there is on each city or municipality or county's website, they have different places for land development. And that's where you would find grants and opportunities for like urban farming and developing certain areas. Housing is a different one. The housing market, real estate is always going to be for profit. You're not going to get a whole lot of grants to just have a house. They don't do that. Whatever they're going to give you will be either a small portion, like for first-time home buyer, or it will be for historical restoration. And a lot of times those are going to be loans. Sometimes they give grants that you don't have to pay back. I know they had the program where they're giving new home buyers $5,000. You didn't have to pay it back. You had to occupy the home for a certain time and things like that. So most of that is going to fall under Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, and HUD. So you can look there, and that's a good place to start. And keep looking, because there are new things that come out all the time. They just came out with some new interest rate. it's a new way they're doing the interest rates for FHA loans if you've had one. And so they're coming, and you gotta watch politics because that's what policy drives where the money goes. So you gotta know a lot of stuff, which can be cumbersome. But look at what is going on politically. You know, Barack Obama extended the whole HARP thing. So that HARP is extended until this year, I think, or 2016, March 2016. So those are the places to look at for the funding. But if you go to Housing and Urban Development, usually it'll have the links. And if you go to every state's website, it'll have the links to the funders who are participating for that state. And then they'll send you to different people who won bids, different community coalitions who are doing homeownership training and things, and they can access different grants and things for you. So hopefully that will give you a kind of a head start for that. And again, go to any of the places for like getting rid of blight, land development, agriculture, Department of Agriculture to point you to grants, especially under the cities, land development for like community gardens and things like that. And you have to get permits for those. And some cities have only a number of permits that they give annually. Yeah, so hopefully that will help you with urban gardening, and you would have to probably turn it into a nonprofit if you're going to give away half and sell half, because anytime you give away something, that's a start or a qualifier as as a nonprofit. So find out what kind of permits you need from your city to do that. It may be because it's a hanging garden. Sometimes it's under air rights. It's under some of the technology and solar and alternative energies grants. So you have to look in a lot of different places to see if you can get the permit for that appropriately in a city. And if you have to rezone your building or your space and how much space is required. And, again, air rights, how much air is required, where you might have to have a certain ceiling height. You gotta look into all of those aspects because that may limit what you can do. So hopefully that answered your question for urban hanging garden. And again, you may have to change, if you can get past all of the zoning rights and things, you can change your agency organization into a nonprofit and then get funding from some of the agricultural places and alternative energies and things like that. Because I'm sure if it's a hanging garden, depending on what kind of sun you're getting, you may want to get some solar installation and things. And there's still money out there for that kind of thing.
Who was it from?
It's an online.
It was named Dante.
A business owner in Chicago. Can you get grant money to open up a storefront, and how do you do so? I'm going to get to that. Startup money is very difficult unless you solicit. And we'll get, I'll talk a little bit more about solicited grants. Okay, so where to look, and this is very brief. So, foundations, and of course, anything that says the foundation for, or the such and such foundation is a foundation. And you can ask.com, Google, Yahoo, Bing foundations, and it'll bring up a plethora. But you want to be real specific in your search. And if you're looking up grants or foundations for healthcare, and try to be as specific as that and keep wheeling your way down so that you can get a group of foundations that are really tailored to giving money to what you are doing, what your services are, or what your product is. And then there's various forms of government. We talked about that. Every state, city, county, federal are giving away money for something or contracting for something. So it's just about your due diligence to look and see if they are giving away money for that thing that you are selling, okay? And then community outreach for most organizations. Again, the Fortune 500 companies and even some obscure companies you would never even think of that you're like, I've never even heard of that company, are giving away money for different programs. Anybody ever heard of J. Jill?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Most people have not, but J. Jill is a girls' women's store. They give monies for, I think, homeless young women. So even small companies that some people have never even thought about have pots of money for their favorite pet projects. So you can look under a rock and find a grant, but it has to match what service, product, or programming you're offering. That's the hard part, is finding one that's perfect for what you're doing. And there are a lot of generalizations. You know, there's a lot of people who give money for domestic violence. There's a lot of people who give money for the homeless. There's a lot of people who give money for creative and media arts. And you just got to find that group that gives money for those things and tap into that money. But then you have to compete with all of those other people who fall under that umbrella. So you have to figure out how to stand out when you have that much competition. Okay. So I'm going to get to this gentleman's questions in Chicago. So what grant funding does? It does provide a way to establish new programming in an established agency, okay? Especially if it's a grant. A lot of times there are some private funders who give money for new startups, and that might be what you want to do with your search, is put that in. Because most established foundations, most of the time, governmental entities and large philanthropic agencies want to give money to established agencies. They don't want to give money. There's not a lot of places in this area for established foundations who give lots of money to startups. There are places for seeds. There are. And this helps decrease the burden of programming dollars for funding. So sometimes you have a funded program and you want to expand it, but where you're getting your monies from might be a political issue, maybe they only give so much, and you might find another program that's similar and you do an offshoot and they're giving more funding and that helps support both. Something like that. That's what grants can do. Now, kind of to answer, and it legitimizes the organization. When you get more grants, you can get more grants. Money kind of begets money. So what doesn't this do? You know, what grants and funding does not do? It is provide a lot of capacity building funds. So we have a question from Chicago about, can we get money for a storefront startup? Yes. Is there a lot of places out there that do that? No. I know about Michigan, and I know because Detroit is the new hotspot, there are places that will help you with your startup. We have Kitchen Connect, we have Tech Town, we have the DEGC, we have D-Love, and we've got all of these other just kind of organizations around. You know, you can tap into some of the places like the Avenue of Fashion has a business organization, and they'll kind of rally around you and give you advice and help in getting an actual physical place. But Detroit is politically a hotspot right now. You got Dan Gilbert buying up everything between here and Ohio, and you've got you know, Warren Buffett put $1 billion into startups in Detroit. Detroit's getting grants and things because it is probably slated to be a very large economic power over the next 10 years. So we're getting money politically. You got to look at politics, follow the money. Chicago, y'all already established. So if you don't have money going into Chicago, you're probably not going to be able to tap into a lot of startup capital funds in that area. Now, if you want to come to Detroit, then there's a difference. Or if you want to go to Ohio, there's a difference. So again, you got to kind of know politically where the money is. You got to follow the money. You got to see where the billionaires are investing, which is in Detroit right now. You also have to see where the grants are going for startups and small businesses. And right now it's Detroit, it's Ohio, the Cleveland area. And so Chicago, New York, Miami, is there a lot of money in startups in those already established areas because they're already hot spots? Probably not. But I know there's always incubators. And so the best thing to do is find an incubator organization. And incubator organizations are organizations where you go in, you either take a number of classes or you join the organization, and they will help you get your business to another level, whether it is just an idea, whether you're a new entrepreneur, or whether it's a very small business. So look for the incubators in your area. I'm sure there's a few. There are always some hanging around. Some are more active than others. Or join something like the Chamber of Commerce, if it's a good one. Some are better than others again. Lions clubs, they're good at helping promote within. Probably the Rotary Club, which is an old entity. It's not, they don't get as much pub, but they still really do a good job of supporting their members. So those are places to start networking, to either solicit to become a pet of a larger business entity, get plugged into an angel investor, or if you're an incubator, work your way to where you can win any pots of money that are slated for capacity building. That's my best answer for that. Unless you've got an ancillary business that you can do some grant writing and get some non-discretionary funds, which means in that case, they're giving you money because you're a startup, and we like startups, and there are a few foundations out there like that. You can do that, get a few of those, and put that down on a business. So that would probably, hopefully that answers Mr. Chicago's question. It's about politics sometimes when you're writing grants. And I hate to say that, but politics rules the world. 3 great ones from Calvin from Detroit. How much should an organization pay out of pocket for a grant writer? Depends on how old the organization is, if you have any kind of grants to build on, any foundation of grant writing to build on, because if you already have an established organization as a grant writer, it's going to be easier for me to get you some money. If you're new and nobody knows who you are, 9 times out of 10, we're going to have to write 10 to 20 grants before you get a dime, depending on where we're going and depending on the kind of organization you are. So how much you should pay a grant writer? That depends. Depends on the grant writer's percentages of getting grants and the types of grants. Some people are excellent at federal grants. Some people are excellent at state grants. Some people are excellent at city grants. Some people are excellent at foundation grants. Some people are all over the place. I'm all over the place. I can write a little short grant and get you $10,000 or $5,000, or help you write a private solicitation proposal that you only want to speak twice and you're only going to get $500. It just depends. It just depends.
Could it be a percentage?
You can be a percentage. It can. That tends to get pricey because, and I'll tell you why, they used to do that when we had a lot of surplus grant money floating around before, probably before the bottom fell out of the housing market and all the money got sucked out of the universe somehow. So again, politics, right? So it used to be like 10, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 10% of what you won for a grant, which if it was $1 million grant, it's a lot of money, $100,000. But the trend has been, especially for, for everybody, they don't give you admin money like that anymore. 6% is kind of the cap they want to see for administrative fees. And administration is your president, your CEO, your vice president, your CFO, your HR department, your IT department. They want you to take 6% of that grant and pay all those people. There is not a lot of room in that for a grant writer, right? So you got to use other money, saved money. You got to use donation money. You got to use profit from any parts of your business that's actually for profit where people have to pay, and say, how much do I pay you to write this particular grant? And what I do is I review a grant and I'll say, I'll estimate the amount of time. And usually if it's a private, I'm working one-on-one with somebody and I'm actually teaching them, I might charge $100 an hour. If I'm doing it and it's a lot of work, it's usually about the same, $50 to $100 an hour. If it's an easy grant, it might only be $50 an hour. If it's something I can look up online and go, I can knock this out in 2 hours, I'm going to charge you $50. It just depends. And every grant writer is different. Some people charge $400 an hour because of their track record or because it's a state grant. It's 160 pages and they've got to do a needs assessment out of this world, which I haven't talked about, which I might have either missed or went over it, but those things take time. So Detroit, I hope that gives you an idea, depends on who the grant writer is, depends on what kind of programming it is. If it's a grant for education and funding, research, scientific grant, you're talking big money because this person is probably in the business and they have to know all the scientific terms and what the research terms are and how they're going to pull off these trials and how much it's going to cost for the materials. It just depends on the grant. If it's a nonprofit and you're talking a program, used to be back in the day, grant writers would get a percentage, but they don't have that kind of money in grants anymore unless you're getting a big federal grant. If you're getting a big federal grant, you might be able to say, if we get this grant, we can give you 6 to 10%, somewhere in there. Because if you already have some of your operational costs covered from other things, you might be able to do that. And I hope you know what I'm talking about. So that might require some private consultation so that you can get a better idea of what those costs would be. And how do you write the small grants to start a program? You use what I told you here and try to find funds that just give money for certain things. There are certain funds out there for women-owned businesses. You're a woman, you're starting a business, we got $5,000, write a quick essay. Those are on there. I've applied for some of those, they're awesome. So you look for those for startup money, and as many of those as you can win, that's how you get seed money. Or else, this part right here, they don't provide enough administrative capital, which we just talked about, and they don't help with startup costs or newly established entities. Big grants just don't do that because they don't. Sometimes there's a caveat when you go to that meeting, that pre-bid meeting or register online, if you haven't been in existence for over 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, they won't even, you're not even allowed to submit a proposal. So that's the challenge. So you got to look for those little small grants that do like startups, and sometimes it's, hey, we want to help you get your domestic violence program off the ground, or hey, we want to help you get your after school program off the ground. You got to look for those, and sometimes they're easy to find, sometimes they're harder. To be honest, for a woman, you're going to find more of those grants than if you're just John Doe off the street trying to start, because that's,
Yay.
Women have a great online community of support, and I hate to say that, but we do. So if you're a woman and you want to get some business for a website, and you need $2,000, there's a little grant out there that you can get just by submitting an awesome 2-page essay. Sorry. But so if you have partners in your business, women or minority-owned partners in your business, you might want to have them be the ones as the signers or the solicitors for those kinds of grants. Leverage your resources, because big grants don't do a lot of startups. What you do if you want to get startup money is become a part of a coalition, especially if you're in a nonprofit arena. That is the new trend over the past 5 years, is coalitions.
What is that?
A coalition is when a number of small seed agencies or established agencies get together and they create a new mission and a new vision, and they share resources. Like I might have a van, and you might have an awesome accountant. And we might get together with Gail, who might have some office space. And we create a little coalition. And so once a week, we might help Habitat for Humanity out as a group, as a part of our mission, and do some anti-homelessness training, like where you can get, Social Security, how you can access that, how you can access, homeless shelters or temporary shelters. And we might do that like once a week or once a month as a coalition. And your accountant might make sure, we're getting donations and stuff, and it disperses because we're all marketing a little bit on social media. And you join a coalition, and that opens up doors for seed money. But you have to be a part of the coalition for a couple of years sometimes before you can apply for the seed money. Again, people want to give to already established entities. who are already kind of doing it. And so a lot of times that means we're using our own money, our own savings, or we've got somebody that's really believes in us, backing us, which I'll go back to the beginning of the presentation and say solicited businesses are sometimes the best place to get your money. Court a business, court a millionaire, court somebody, and don't do anything unethical, but court them on a very business level and get to know them. I see these are some of your charitable pillars. These are part of your mission and vision for giving back to the community, and that's what I do. And you give them a great proposal on why they should kind of adopt you and make you their pet project for kind of funding. Because there are companies who you can court and do that. A church, sometimes at a church, you can go into a church and say, hey, I'm gonna do this program with you. If you guys give me the space, I can do the program. And after, some of the church members begin to really benefit from what you're offering, the church might find funds for you. Or the school, or, especially if it's a small school or a high school, or a nonprofit that has space. And you say, okay, well, I know you guys kind of clear out from 5 to 6, and I want to do a domestic violence training, or I want to do an art workshop, and your kids can come, and then you do that for them for free for a while, and they'll give you the space, and then after a while, they're like, well, we really like these people, we want to give you guys some money, or we want to find some money for you, or we'll let our grant writers write a grant for you, that kind of thing. So those are some creative ways to tap into money, okay? Let me see if there's any more questions. Okay, China in Detroit. How can you get grant funding if you are a nonprofit and not a 501c3? That's what a nonprofit is. You have to be a 501c3. It means that you want to establish a 501c3 because you have to get that in order to be considered a legitimate nonprofit. So they're not mutually exclusive. You have an idea for a nonprofit, or you're doing something and you're not making a profit off of it, that's one thing. But until you file those papers, you're not a nonprofit. You're just acting like you could be a nonprofit. So understand that, China. You've got to actually establish the business model. And we're going to have that training. So we welcome you to come to our, so you want to start a nonprofit training, so that you know what you need to do to actually start a nonprofit legitimately, because you're not going to be recognized by anybody who has got money if you don't have that 501c3. Well, if you know a way to do it without the 501c3 status, because that gives you your tax exempt with the government, the federal government, and that's what people want to see as a part of your package, then you need to call me, because that's some new information. And I grew up in a lawyer's office. I worked for nonprofits for 15 years. You know how to do nonprofit status without actually filing for a nonprofit, then you need to be training, okay? Because I'm not sure I know anything about that. But that's a really interesting topic. That's a good question. Okay. So that's kind of what we've been doing. We're at the 8 o'clock hour. And so any more questions? Any more other tax codes? Churches have a different tax code besides 501c3. But sometimes grantors don't want to give to religious entities. So they don't want to have any religious spin on their money because of the laws that we have about separation of church and state. And why is because they have specific tax codes they have to follow as a foundation or a grantor when they're giving out money. So if they give their money to a 501c3, they get a bigger tax write-off. That's why that 501c3 is important. Not so much for you, it's for people giving you the money, because they need the tax write-off. That's why they're giving it. Not all of them are giving it because they're so benevolent. They're giving it so that they can continue to basically not pay taxes as billion-dollar companies. Okay? Okay. It's political. Yes, ma'am.
As a beginning entrepreneur, female, what organizations do you think we should join besides the chamber?
Okay. There are a lot of new and popping up organizations. Matter of fact, we're doing a mompreneurs this weekend. It's on Saturday. I know it excludes you if you're not a mom, but I don't care.
I
I'm
am a
going
mom,
anyway.
they're just old.
You're you're a mom. That's good. I'm a godmom, so I'm good. I'm going anyway. I'm going to be hosting at the radio station. But they've got those kinds of.
What's the actual date?
Say that again.
Say the actual date.
The actual date is, it's going to be Saturday. I'm going to pull it up on my Facebook so I can quote it. Where is it? Here we go. It is, it's Saturday, and it is March 14th. Of course, it's in Detroit. It's the Build Institute located in Bagley, and it's a mompreneur social. There is another group called the Women Entrepreneurs. That's one to join. There's a lot of them out there. And, you know, each one has its different mission and vision. But if you start, LinkedIn is a great resource for different places to kind of network and build your brand. Especially if you want to do a women-focused one, they're very welcoming. And just if you look on LinkedIn, sometimes you get invites just because you're on there. So that's a great one to kind of tap into, and it is a great way to network and get your stuff out there. Yes. Okay. Okay. So we've got about let me make sure we don't have any more questions. We've got about 15 minutes left. And I do want to see if you guys in specific, because you've made it here, is there something in specific that would help you build from where you are now, especially when you're talking about grant writing or proposal writing?
For me, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier,
Mm-hmm.
off the screen,
Mm-hmm.
talking about my hearts to hearts.
Yes.
And I am such a newbie
Okay.
that this discussion was really wonderful. And like looking at Kickstarter, I feel like my mission statement wasn't enough to, because it didn't just talk financial, it didn't talk end product.
Okay.
It talked about like my vision.
Which is okay. Your mission statement does not have to go into all that. Remember?
But,
Yeah.
I got $3. But I didn't post it on Facebook, and they really encourage that.
Okay.
So for a newbie,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I understand that I need to get like a corporate license and whatever, and I do have a hookup for an accountant to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But still, funding,
It's tough for all that legal stuff.
yeah, even the starting of that portion.
Okay.
And I did contribute my portion
Mm-hmm.
in that at certain levels, I was going to give, original artwork.
Mm-hmm.
So I put some of me into that,
Mhm.
but I only got $3.
Okay. That's okay.
So, well, I got something.
Yeah.
I feel good about that. What's a better way for me to present that would
Really get people gravitate to your mission.
yes,
Right.
or tips?
Yes.
How is your branding? So that's a good place to start. We have a seminar.
Yes.
It was just 2 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago
Yep.
that we put on. It's on this series right now
Mhm.
about branding, and you really need to watch it, as well as get involved with the gentleman that was speaking on there.
Exactly.
And the more you have yourself out there,
Mm-hmm.
the more branded you are,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
better you are.
Yes.
The more, because you mentioned putting it on Facebook. The more you put it out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram,
LinkedIn.
all of those platforms will equal, because you can post your Kickstarter to all those.
Yes.
And LinkedIn right now is really, really strong when it comes to putting content out there.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I'm suggesting you should do is do something like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Is stand in front of this camera
Mhm.
and say, here's my stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever that stuff is. And this is what I can make, and then show them how you made it.
Mhm.
Maybe a YouTube.
Make a YouTube,
Yeah.
but the video can go on all those different platforms. Even if you do a short one, even if it's either about Kickstarter or about your services, you can do a short 15-second one on Instagram.
One other comment about that, if I may. Keep your videos 12 minutes or long or short.
Oh, yes, please.
The average 5 minutes and like 23 seconds is the best time, because if you do anything longer than that, the attention span of somebody gets lost.
Yeah.
So
When I did videos, and I was probably one of the first people doing videos on Facebook, mine would be under 4 minutes,
Yeah.
usually about 3 minutes. Because people do have just like we were talking about earlier, ADHD and ADD, people have very short attention spans.
Color.
the gentleman's name is Ken
Uh-huh.
Hurrell.
Yeah, Ken Harrell,
Hurrell,
and
sorry.
he does the branding for My Success.
Yeah. Okay. And while you were talking about all that, I was listening, but I was thinking, as you're talking about going onto these different venues, LinkedIn, I am quite a bit older, so that's not part of my everyday lifestyle like my children. I mean, I'm there.
Yeah.
So I need to be on there more. But when I kept saying newbie,
Mhm.
I really meant it.
Okay. Okay, so that's the first thing we need to do. And maybe that's something we need to do for My Success, is to do a social media training. So we are planning, so, this is My Success, and I am part of Bell Weather Network, and Ken has his own company. I can't think of Ken's branding company right now. But we'll be working with Ron Marshall, who is the coordinator for My Success, to bring you guys really good content. And either through here or through Romacoma or through our individual businesses. But we will definitely be mindful that we need kind of a social media branding thing, and maybe Ken will do that because that's kind of his area.
A thing to add to that would be, I've gone, to the different cities, the classes they have for unemployed and stuff like that. So you get the information. I think there needs to be like a little bit of a follow-up.
Yeah.
Because, I've gone to LinkedIn like twice over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not like an older person who's afraid that I'm going to delete all the memory on my computer.
Right.
But, you just kind of like to have a little bit more
Hands-on.
Yeah, you just don't want to say, hi, how you doing today? You want to put it out there the way that's the most accepted.
Yeah, you want valuable and efficient content in all of your media sources.
Yeah, and you can't learn that in an hour and a half is what I'm saying.
No. And so that will be something that I will talk to My Success about, and Ron and Ken, and see if they can do just one on each social media.
Actually, Ron just messaged me and said he's doing one on Friday.
Excellent.
I think is at lunchtime or something.
It's a brown bagger.
Right, I think it's brown bagger.
It's too early.
Probably, but what we can do is
We will repeat it.
Well,
We
yes.
will repeat it. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Mercedes, did you have something specific for your goals? Because I know when we were talking before we started broadcasting, you want to become a proposal writer.
Right, so I thought,
Did you get enough?
yeah. Right now I see it as a bit overwhelming.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Do the smaller ones.
Right, and I would like to know, on average,
Mhm.
how many grants did you take up on as a job? Like,
As a job,
yeah,
after I stopped writing I'm still writing for them. And some of my clients I write 4 or 5 and 6 grants for, little mini grants, the ones I was telling you about, because they are kind of startups. And then I'm working with a couple clients where I'm walking them through the grant writing process. one person is learning how to write grants for their company, and the other person is doing a private solicitation with a specific, in her case, a school. She wants to present a program. So I'm walking her through how you build your proposal for this very specific audience to sell this very specific curriculum to them. And we have to put a dollar value on it and all of that. So this is full creativity. Whereas the other one is, this is how you write a proposal. And because you're this kind of a program, because you're a food program, this is how you're gonna have, so that I like to teach grant writing. For one of my clients, I do mini grants. So I just go on there, I tell her how many hours it's gonna take me, I send her my bill, and she just like, okay. And then I'll I got a response, or nope, we didn't get this one. And you know what I'm saying? So far we're at like grant number 7. And then for the nonprofit I work for, we write state grants all the time. So I work on average 10 to 15 grants a year for them. And so I do all the editing. It's a team writing component because the grants are so big. Again, the state proposals can get up to 100 pages. So we do it in a team format because a lot and it's usually just the two of us. She's not the CEO, but the executive director, myself, and we team up on those grants. And I might create some content or go in and do a chart or a graph because people like visuals that draws them into your proposal, that kind of stuff, or put in some statistics or so we kind of tag team it so it's not so overwhelming. Right. Because like I said, I have a lot of jobs and it's hard to sit there for 10 hours and just write a grant with all the other things I do. But that's what I used to do. Sometimes I take a day and I would be there maybe from 9 o'clock in the morning and leave at 10:30 at night just writing grants. So it just depends on the grant.
Also, with that being said, I know there are deadlines for grants.
Every single grant, there's a deadline.
So how do you prepare yourself for that? Like, do people come a week or two ahead of time? Like, how
do we set it up?
Right.
Because I did most of my grant writing for the big grants and nonprofit setting, we would have a grant writing meeting. So whenever a new grant comes out, and you can get on email lists where they send you big grants, they send them to your email. You got to go through and read your email and see what the newest grant is. And then you see one that you got a program model for, you can tap into that grant, and then we would set up a meeting probably within 5 days of that notice, because the grant is usually a month out. And you send them a month out for those kind of federal grants. Some federal grants are 3 months out. It just depends. And so we would meet, talk about it. We'd go over the budget first. Can we fiscally handle this program? If we couldn't, we wouldn't worry about it. We'd scrap it. We'd be done with that meeting. If we could, then we start assigning. Okay, we need the budget by this date. We need this by this date. This person and this person, we're going to do the body, and we're going to have it done by this date. It has to be uploaded by this time at 3 p.m. And so we do it in a team approach. And that's how we would meet to get the grants done. Smaller grants, like the city grants, I used to write a lot of the city grants and substance abuse grants by myself. So I would just sit there and be like, okay, what's the deadline? Okay, I'm going to put this do not disturb sign on my door on these due dates. And I'd sit there and I'd get my statistics, drink my coffee, and just get it done. And then I would, upload it by the deadline, because luckily, a lot of those grants happen to be uploaded. It used to be back in the day when I started grant writing, you had to go make 7 copies and take it and drive 3 miles to Lansing, 30, how many ever miles it is to Lansing, 3 hours, wherever, and physically take it, and by 3 p.m., for the deadline. Yeah, and they would date stamp it, and you better not be late, because then it was it.
Right.
So so that's how it works. But a lot of grants are already online, especially the small ones. You put your email in, your information, you get into the portal, you write some of it. You can take a break, like I'm gonna finish some up tomorrow because the deadline's not for 2 weeks. Go back in, put your password in, go back in, write some more. You can do your budget offline, so you're like, okay, you can tweak it, cut, paste it in there, send it. You're done.
And there's a lot of research.
It depends on the program.
Right.
Yeah. Some are, tell me about your mission, your vision, your passion, and how you're gonna spend the money, and that's it. And some are, we need a needs assessment, and the needs assessment is, why is this particular area in Iowa in need of this program? You know, and you got to go through like census data and child welfare statistics, and it just depends on the grant. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left, and I want to kind of close out, and we'll continue with our audience here. Well, I really do kind of want to thank you guys all for coming out to the Connected Geek. Thank you to our host. I appreciate you. This is Larry, Connected Geek, computer repair and network solutions. So he hosts us for a lot of our trainings in this area, and he will be hosting us. So don't forget to ask him any questions you need about any kind of networking, computing, what you can do webinars. He's awesome. And this has been a My Success production. I'm Jodi Luster. I'm with Bellwether Network, and we are here to serve you. So we are hopefully going to develop a lot more trainings based on your feedback and our online community's feedback about what you need. And hopefully Larry will continue to host us here at Connected Geek. Larry is at connectedgeek.net. And then My Success, you can get with us on Facebook. You can go to Ron Marshall's page. I have a Bellwether Network page, but I'm Jodi Luster, and so you can always reach me on my homepage or on my Elevated Living page, which is my personal coaching, because I'm a therapist. So I also do coaching. So I do the hard stuff, but I like to do the life stuff too. So that's cool. So thank you guys for coming. If our online community has any more questions, feel free to post those to Facebook, and we'll be glad to get back to you. Leave your email address, and I will definitely be trying to follow up with each of you to see if there's some further nuggets we can give you, meet with you, and get you going, especially when it comes to grant writing and proposals and getting your dreams funded. All right. Thank you guys. Join us again.